The genesis of the project was truly I just had a nightmare 2 nights in a row, which almost never happens to me, which was very similar to like the first 30, 40 minutes of the film.
You had the same nightmare?
Yeah,
Wow.
I had a recurring nightmare, which I'd had a concussion recently. It's possibly worth noting, but I'm fine now.
Guys, give it up for Team Azrael. Right here. All right. You were expecting
Wow,
that.
what was that about? What did we do?
You know, just getting the energy up a little bit. You know. You guys. Well, I mean, first of all, what a triumvirate! What a triumvirate you guys are, like, for horror fans. To see the three of you come together is very, very exciting. This movie, I have no words for it.
Which is appropriate. Yeah. That's how we plan to market it.
That was an Azrael joke that nobody watching this will get because they haven't seen the movie yet. It's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. I was blown away by it. Fantastic work to you all. Simon, let's start with you. You have a couple hits under your belt. The Guest, you're next. You're not missing. I gotta tell you. Tell us about the genesis of this one. This one. It's a pretty ambitious tale you're telling here. Tell us where it came from.
In the creative sense, I felt like with films like You're Next and The Guest that I'd started to rely a lot on kind of like maybe what optimistically could be described as clever or like sarcastic dialogue. Like I was leaning a lot on my dialogue and I thought I was very good at writing a certain style of dialogue, but I also like didn't want to go too far down that road because ultimately I think cinema isn't just about that. So I wanted to write something that was more of a pure, like just like action, and you understood the character and who she is purely through what you see her doing, which is a way to transform, how the audience feels about her and what they know about her. And then the genesis of the project was truly I just had a nightmare 2 nights in a row, which almost never happens to me, which was very similar to like the first 30, 40 minutes of the film.
You had the same nightmare?
Yeah, wow. I had a recurring nightmare, which I'd had a concussion recently. It's possibly worth noting, but I'm fine now. And I was having this dream that I like in the dream I felt like I would wake up feeling like that was a vision of the future. Yeah. Like I need to write it down, and then I didn't. And then the next night I had the same dream again, so I was like, okay, I will write it down. And then it just felt like, okay, that's almost a complete story. I'll just see how far I can get with that as a script.
Were there no lines in the dream?
There were no lines in the dream. It was no one talked in the dream. It was like I understood in the dream why they didn't talk, but it was the same reason in the film. Yeah. Well, sometimes your dreams you kind of don't know why people are doing it. But in this one I understood the context. But it was a very religious dream, and I'm not a very religious person, so I kind of felt like it was someone else's dream that I was just like getting somehow. Wow. So I kind of talked to Evan about this. I was like, I feel like this is like a story that I have to tell. And then having done that, I was like, well, I don't know what to do with this. Cause then you have like a 48-page screenplay that everyone's like, I don't know what this is. But Evan saw the vision in it and, it worked out.
Yeah. Sam, were you aware of this by the way, that it came from a dream?
It was a dream?
Yes.
No. I had a completely different story than the one you've been saying, so I was way off.
Yeah. Well, what was your reaction to reading the script for the first time?
I was really afraid, which is a good sign for me to do something. Usually if I'm like, oh yeah, I can do this, I shouldn't do it. And if it's terrifying, I'm usually have to do it to see if I can.
You look for the terrors in your work.
I look for the terror, yeah.
Yeah.
If it makes me nervous, I'm like, okay, let's do it, damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about you, Evan? Did this make you nervous?
Oh, big time. It still does.
Have you seen it?
Yeah. It was a crazy, it was a crazy thing to conceive. It was a crazy thing to try to make. It was a crazy thing to try to finish and post. All of it, because there was so much just like world building that Simon did that doesn't necessarily have tons of a cinematic like history to pull from.
Right.
The communication, like the world, like all of it, and just so much action, like tons of action, and in nature, which like I talked to a lot of different DPs about working on this, and like all of them were just like, oh man, the woods. Like nobody wanted to go in the woods. They hate shooting in the woods. It's hard to light. It's hard to do anything. It's hard to do anything at all.
Yeah, you can't control that.
Can't control anything, which was, it's like a lot of the nature production anyways. So it's like, but I think that there was some sort of like early, I don't know, kind of mania where I was like, yeah, like the impossible thing, you know, in Eastern Europe, like, you know, that all was really appealing because it does help because you feel like you're out there in the wild. Yeah, it's inspiring.
It's good. I was not having any control over it.
No control.
It added to it, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, you know, I'd worked in some TV stuff for a while, and I think there's such a buttoned up element to that, which, you know, can make it kind of civil, but can be very boring and, you know, and static. And I think like this felt like a living, crazy thing. And it felt that way when I read it for the first time. I was like, Simon, like, this is fantastic. I want to live in a world where these kind of genre movies can happen, you know, and that was it.
Yeah, and I mean, to set up the premise for those watching this, I don't know how much you guys want to say about it. I think we can say it's about a young woman who's in the wilderness. It's post-rapture, and she's being sort of terrorized by forces both human and otherwise. Are you saying what else she's being terrorized? Do you want people to know? We want to keep it a surprise?
Yeah, I mean, I think we really wanted to make something very unique for horror fans, and part of that is the discovery. I like that people. This can sometimes sound like a cop-out, but I like that people have to kind of look into it a little to interpret it. Yeah. So, because that's something that's kind of rare in the genre right now, and we've seen every horror movie between the three of us. I feel pretty confident saying, and you know, and it's hard to do something unique. So, but everyone was down for that. But I mean, we all kind of tried to work outside our comfort zones, and literally then went into the freezing woods. Yeah,
I kind of feel like the second we, you know, fumble through some explanation of the mythology, it becomes like an inert thing, and I feel like
it takes away from it.
It does. Yeah. I want people to just come up with their own crazy shit.
Debate after as they walk to their cars.
Go to Reddit. You know, do this.
To me, it's obvious. The film speaks for itself. You know, it's like, what questions 100%. Could you possibly have after you see Azrael? The only question you should have is, how do I get another ticket?
Wow.
There you go.
Hear that,
well done. Well played. All we'll say is there's some freaky deaky shit that's going to happen in this movie. Sam,
that's the tagline.
That's the tagline. I'm still recovering from Ready or Not. You are very quickly becoming like a heroine in this genre. What, you know, did that sort of like, after that experience and the success you had with that film, did that sort of grab a hold of you and want you to explore genre filmmaking a little deeper?
Yeah, totally. I think it's so fun. There's limited, you know, stunts and getting down and dirty in female roles. And in horror, that's where you can do it. And that's where you can be one of the guys, you know, and I love that. It makes me feel really powerful and I have autonomy over it, and working with stunt people, and most of them are dudes, and being like, let me show you. You know, it's fun. It's really, it's really empowering. And I think horror is a space where women can do that.
And Simon and Evan, what can you say about Sam's casting and why she was so right for this?
Because she was fearless. Like, you know, we talked to people and they were just completely like, so hold on a second, I would actually be doing things out there. And like Sam was just like, yeah, let's get weird. I'm down. I'm interested in this script. I don't even know what the fuck it means, but that doesn't matter. I think it's really interesting. And that was such a cool attitude to bring. And then she just brought like a real enthusiasm to all these challenging elements. How the hell do they communicate? How do we get around? How do we do as much practical stunts as possible? And, you know, a lot of people put through the situation would probably have a really fucking hard time. And, you know, she probably was, but I could never tell.
Well, no, because, I mean, shout out to Stanny and the stunt team. They were beautiful to work with and always made it feel safe. And they were really collaborative, and you know, if something wasn't working, they would just change it on the day, and they were incredible.
Total artists.
Such a huge part of this movie. And I love the fact that when I read it, I had my interpretation and could come up with my own backstory of what I thought would happen and my own mythology. And Simon had his, Evan had his, you know, everyone had their own. You can totally make it up.
Yeah. It is one of the joys.
Yeah, it's great.
100% one of the joys of watching this film is just exactly theorizing what in the world happened before this.
Curiosity is the most.
Circumstances are around all these characters and how they got to where they are, and then and then there's the wordless aspect to it. I mean, Simon. I mean, we I mentioned your creds, but like, is it tougher to push a script like this through? You said it was 48 pages. doesn't have any dialogue. Did you find it to be a tougher sell because of that aspect at all? Or were people like, bring it on?
Once Evan got attached to direct, which happened in a really strange, organic way, where I'd written it kind of for myself originally to direct, and then I kind of felt like I'd lost my vision for it. And at a certain point, we were talking to our producer, Dan Kagan, and he suggested Evan, and I was like, well, I would love to work with Evan. Evan's, like, Evan and I have been friends for 20 years. It was, it was weird how everything kind of came together, even Samara being cast, I'm friends with Radio Silence. I was able to reach out and be like, is she cool? And they're like, oh, she's so cool. And so it was a bunch of it was this kind of challenge from the start of like, here's this script that when people look at it, they say basically this is unmakeable. But we are going to make it. And now that we have Samara Weaving attached, they can't stop us. But there were definitely times like the challenges was not so much writing it or even convincing people that it was a feature film. The challenge was more like honestly on like a first AD level, breaking down like our shooting days from a script that like 3 days of shooting would be like one paragraph, and then there'd be 3 pages of Samara walking through the woods.
Yeah, practicality was the tough part, right?
There was just some like actual production stuff that was difficult. But oddly, once Evan attached himself, people I think started to see it as like a commercial project, and kind of got what it could be.
Yeah, and I mean, Evan, how does that aspect of the film like change the technical approach to it? Like, are you approaching score differently? Are you approaching sound? Do you have to approach sound design differently because they sort of have to?
This was the longest kind of process of a sound mix. We went to Finland, we went to Estonia. We spent months before we even went to our international sound mix working with, a sound designer in Los Angeles in conjunction with another sound designer in Estonia. And I'd never had a mix that extensive before. It's like the movies that I'd done. You get like a week or two of somebody. It's all pretty like literal stuff. It's like, well, somebody stepped on something. This is Foley. Simon had been on like much longer mixes, so it was great hanging out with him, and Dan in 2 different countries and just working on this thing where it's like, okay, like what does this wind mean? Like, why does this wind sound different than in this other scene? Okay, are we trying to push something here that's a story point with this? And then, breath and just every sound in the world had to become super freaking specific.
Yeah.
Because you can't have the score do everything too much, or else it's going to numb people if the score is like hitting all these like, on the nose things that maybe the people might not even understand from the footage, So it's like, it's more of a immersive experience that's like kind of curious where you're like, well, what does that mean? But it was really important.
When you take away words from like a film, you're taking away like so much from people's toolboxes. That's why I was so happy that Samara was willing to be brave enough to do this performance, because so many actors would be so uncomfortable not having words and words that they could change or words that they could like process and figure out their character through that. It really does become a different experience, and like every gasp that Samara did on set is in the movie. Like we used everything because that's a certain you realize that you have to express yourself in a different way. I don't think we're going to do it again.
No, definitely not.
But it was
no sequel,
once in a lifetime kind of thing.
I guess we'll see. But I mean, it was an experiment that I think worked. You know. So,
well, you made it easier. That script was phenomenal.
I really don't I don't know about that script.
I'm telling you.
No, it's good.
It's a really good
Thank
read.
you very much.
Well, Samara, I mean, I think there's an assumption to be made when you hear an actor doing a wordless movie that like maybe it's going to be easier for them because they don't have to obviously like
Don't have to learn lines.
But is it? I almost think it could be the opposite because of how much you have to actually convey without dialogue.
At first it was scary because I thought, how am I going to communicate with an audience using just my face and limbs? And, instead of learning lines, I had to learn so much choreography, which was harder because I needed an Epsom salt bath afterwards. Mm-hmm. But it was really fun. I had a really good time. I know we're saying how intense it was, but with the challenge this intense, there's such a reward, being able, like when we wrapped, the elation was incredible.
Yes,
we accomplished something really incredible and we pulled it off. So I think yeah, I'm super proud of this.
Well,
We did it, you guys. We made it out alive.
Well, I can't wait until everybody else gets to see it. I can't wait till South by gets to see it. I think it's going to play like gangbusters. So big,
Awesome.
big
Thank you.
congrats to you
Fingers
guys.
crossed.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right.